What do you think the job approval rating is of Mike Norvell amongst Florida State fans? Just poll all the Florida State fans. Do you approve or disapprove of the job Mike Norvell is doing? I think you would see the most radical shift over a 4-month span that we've ever seen in this sport. Think about this. I would say if we took a poll of his job approval rating in August, it would be above 90%. If we took it now, it would be below 25%, and that's being kind. And what's changed? 1 year, half to 3/4 of one season has changed. And I would argue with you, you could only have that radical a change by losing games. Scandal would not even change it. Like scandal, most fans don't even care about if you'll win for them. Massive amounts of injury. You would lose games, but at least there'd be an excuse for it. That is not the case here. They've just fallen off a cliff. There's no comparable data point. This is the worst 9-game start for a top 10 preseason team ever. We don't have a comparable data point. We can't look back and say, oh, well, remember that Louisville team in 1963? No, I don't. It didn't happen. And we all remember how good that 63 Louisville team was. So everybody down there disapproves of it. There is no hot seat talk. Well, there is. It's not real because they just renewed his contract, and I'm not sure that's the responsible way to look at it anyway. But the job approval is in the tank, as it should be. They're 1-8, guys. They're 1-8, and a lot of these have not been close. That's the difference between a team like this and maybe a team like USC. Lincoln Riley hasn't lost as many games, but they're competitive. Florida State hadn't been competitive. They got to go to Notre Dame this Saturday. There's just some really, really TVMA things that Notre Dame is getting ready to do to Florida State this Saturday. You can't run Florida State like it's a roulette table or a roulette program. You know, the more you look at last year, the more it's obvious they just landed on red 32. Translation, they just hit on a bunch of portal guys, and it worked out for them, and they doubled down. They said, let it ride, black 16. Oh, 1-8. There's no excuse for Florida State to be run like that. Florida State ought to be able to lean on good old-fashioned high school football recruiting and good old-fashioned in-house development and culture. That's what they should be able to lean on. They can't right now. Will that be the case in the future? I think that this is a lost season, but I also think the fan base understands Memphis happened. Norvell at Memphis, that happened. Norvell here last year, that happened. The guy didn't forget how to coach football. He didn't forget all the stuff that worked for him before. It's just this attempt this year is dead on arrival, and maybe there'll be a coach that experiences this every year in the new era of college football. So let's not get ahead of ourselves and just throw everything out. But you got to sense drastic changes are coming. That's obvious. I think the fan base down there senses that as well, which means nearly a complete staff overhaul. I'm sure a lot of the roster will get flipped, but at the same time, you got to be careful trying to solve the problems the portal created by leaning heavily on the portal. But then if you're going to do it the right way, that requires more patience because you're not going to have an immediate bounce back year. So remains to be seen how the fan base handles that. But with a radical reset comes a couple of things, really like 3 things. Number one, you get the new hope and energy. I think he's going to clean out most of his coaching staff. And so when you get a bunch of new guys in, you've seen your staff get turned over before. If you're an A&M fan or an Oklahoma fan, you've seen a bunch of new guys come in. Doesn't matter how bad you were the year before. That's ancient history. We're living in the windshield, not the rearview mirror. And that's a new hope. That's a new energy. And that means you got a new recruiting identity, which they badly need because they are not a great recruiting program by any stretch right now. And it doesn't look like they're trending that way. They've got to get better recruiters in there. Their staff has to have a premium placed on recruiting. And that further energizes the fan base when you start landing guys. And then they've got to have the ability to be viewed again as a destination in the portal. Because while you don't want to lean on it, you do want to utilize it. They'll never go away from that. They shouldn't go away from that. I would argue every major program should utilize it. But right now, no one wants to go there. And you got to change that. And the way to change that is drastic change. And I think the fan base demands that, and they should. Job approval's in the tank right now from Mike Norvell. But that doesn't mean that the future can't still have you somewhat optimistic. But huge changes have to be made.